You know that moment when your entire world shatters in front of 50 people and all you can do is stand there, frozen, while the pieces fall? That was my 50th birthday party. Let me paint you the picture. Backyard strung with twinkling lights that look like fallen stars, the smell of charcoal and sizzling ribs hanging thick in the summer air. Laughter bouncing off the fence as friends and family clinked glasses under the maple tree I'd planted when my son was born. I'd saved for months to make this happen. Not some extravagant celebration, just a simple gathering with the people who supposedly loved me. The bounce house squeaked with grandkids' laughter. Motown classics drifted from the speakers. My husband Robert had just surprised me with a custom necklace, and I felt happy. Genuinely happy. Then my son, Jake, stood up. Glass in hand, face flushed from the 3 beers I'd counted him downing, he tapped his spoon against the rim. Everyone turned. I smiled, thinking, oh, how sweet, a toast from my boy. The music lowered. Neighbors leaned in. My best friend Marlene raised her phone to record the moment. What came next, I'll never forget. Mom, Jake's voice cut through the evening like a blade, loud enough to silence the crickets. Happy birthday. But let's be real here. Everyone's sick of you. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Sick of your meddling, sick of your guilt trips, sick of your constant nagging and fake smiles and endless demands. You're a black cloud, Mom. You suck the life out of everything. We all just tolerate you because we have to. Crack! The sound of Marlene's phone hitting the concrete. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. My chest tightened. Actually tightened, like someone had reached in and squeezed my heart with a fist. The smell of burnt meat suddenly turned my stomach. Robert's hand found my shoulder, but I couldn't feel it. I just stared at Jake, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, watching his lips move with words that kept stabbing. Burden. Tolerate. Sick of you. Behind him, his wife Kendra stood with her arms crossed, a smirk twisting her mouth like she'd just won something. The party died right there. People mumbled excuses. Early morning. Babysitter issues. Avoiding my eyes as they shuffled out. By 9 o'clock, I was alone in my backyard with wilted balloons drifting across the grass and a cake nobody had touched except for the one slice I'd forced down to keep from screaming. I sat on that porch swing until midnight, the creak, 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 mocking every tear that soaked my blouse, replaying those words. Everyone's sick of you. But here's what Jake didn't know, what Kendra didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine. I wasn't just a devoted mother, I was a woman who'd survived hell, built empires in silence, and learned that patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. This wasn't my ending, this was my beginning. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you loved most, hit that subscribe button, because this story is just getting started. To understand why Jake's words cut so deep, you need to know the foundation they shattered. I was 25 years old when Jake's father, Michael, died. One moment I was a young wife planning our future. The next I was a widow with an 8-year-old boy who kept asking when Daddy was coming home from the hospital. The answer was never. Drunk driver, head-on collision, gone before the ambulance arrived. The life insurance barely covered the funeral costs. Michael had been a dreamer, always talking about the business he'd start, the investments he'd make. But dreams don't pay bills. His parents were gone. Mine lived 3 states away on fixed incomes. It was just me and Jake in a rental apartment with secondhand furniture and a refrigerator that hummed too loud at night. So I worked. God, did I work. Days, I was a nurse's aide at Pinewood Retirement Home, changing bedpans and monitoring medications for $12 an hour. Evenings, I waitressed at Giuseppe's Italian restaurant, feet screaming in shoes held together with duct tape, forcing smiles for tips that sometimes didn't cover gas. Nights. The nights were worst. I cleaned office buildings downtown, vacuuming under fluorescent lights while Jake slept at our neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment. I remember the gnaw of hunger becoming so familiar, it felt like a companion. I'd pack Jake's lunch with sandwich, apple, cookies, juice box, everything the other kids had, then eat ramen noodles for dinner, telling him I'd already eaten at work. The lie tasted worse than the sodium. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation, stitching tears, covering stains with cardigans, while Jake got new sneakers every time his feet grew because I'd be damned if my son looked poor at school. When he turned 13, the attitude started. Slamming doors, rolling eyes. "You don't understand anything, Mom." And maybe I didn't. Maybe working 70-hour weeks meant I missed things. But I understood the electric bill. I understood keeping the heat on in winter. I understood that his field trip money and soccer cleats didn't materialize from thin air. High school brought new challenges. Jake wanted guitar lessons. I found a teacher willing to barter for home-cooked meals. He wanted to join the travel baseball team. I picked up extra weekend shifts, sold our only TV, made it happen. His friends' parents drove SUVs. I drove a 1994 Corolla with a passenger door that wouldn't open from the inside. But Jake made varsity. Jake had cleats that fit. Jake never went hungry. By the time he graduated, I'd managed to sock away enough for community college tuition. Barely. He lasted 3 semesters before announcing he was pursuing music full-time. The band, 4 guys named Voltage Theory or some nonsense, practiced in our garage, drank our beer, left cigarette burns in the carpet. I smiled and brought them sandwiches, even as my savings evaporated on his necessary equipment: amplifiers, a drum set, recording software. The band dissolved after 8 months. One failed venture led to another: a food truck idea, a cryptocurrency scheme, a plan to flip motorcycles. Each one guaranteed to hit big. "Mom, I just need seed money." Each one crashed harder than the last. I kept believing, kept writing checks. What else does a mother do? Then came Kendra. Glossy hair, designer purse, confidence that bordered on entitlement. She worked in marketing, talked about building her brand, posted endless selfies. Jake was smitten. I hosted their engagement dinner, paid for the wedding when her parents had cash flow issues. $18,000 for a day that should have been simple, but Kendra needed the riverside venue and imported flowers. I gave them the honeymoon to Cancun as a gift, co-signed their first apartment lease because Kendra's credit was rebuilding. When they bought the house 3 years later, I put down 20%, $35,000 from my carefully guarded savings. "It's an investment in your future," I told Jake. He hugged me. Kendra air-kissed my cheek and immediately started planning renovations. By my tally, and believe me, after that party, I tallied every goddamn cent. I'd given Jake over $150,000 across 24 years. College attempts, failed businesses, the wedding, house down payment, emergency loans that were never repaid, co-signed credit cards, car payments when they were between jobs. I never asked for payback. He was my son. My only child after burying a daughter to leukemia when she was 6. But that's a wound too deep for today. Jake was my second chance at motherhood, and I poured everything into making his life better than mine had been. Meanwhile, I'd remarried at 45. Robert was different from Michael. Steady, practical, an accountant with a 401k and Sunday crossword habit. We lived modestly in the same house I'd bought during my aid days, drove cars until they died, clipped coupons. Comfortable, but not flashy. That's what everyone saw anyway. Here's what they didn't see: the empire I'd built in the shadows. During those early years, the nurse's aid days, the waitressing nights, I had downtime. 15-minute breaks where I couldn't go home but couldn't sleep either. So I read finance blogs, investment forums, library books on stock trading and real estate. I became obsessed with the idea that money could work for me instead of me working myself to death for money. When Jake was 12, I won a small settlement, $5,000 from a slip and fall at the retirement home. Wet floor, no sign, my knee never healed quite right. The home's insurance wanted it quiet. Most people would have blown it on a vacation or paid down debt. I opened a brokerage account. I started small, index funds, blue chip stocks. I studied patterns during lunch breaks, learning to read market trends like some people read novels. That $5,000 became $8,000 in a year, then $15,000. I got bolder: real estate investment trusts, dividend aristocrats, a small rental property bought at foreclosure that I fixed up on weekends and rented to college students. By the time I married Robert, I had $120,000 tucked away in accounts Jake didn't know existed. Robert knew. He helped me optimize, setting up trusts, showing me tax shelters, introducing me to strategies I'd only read about. We lived on his accountant's salary and my clinic income, which had grown as I'd worked up to nursing supervisor. Every extra dollar went into the portfolio. Rental properties multiplied. I bought a duplex in the college district, then a small commercial space I leased to a yoga studio. The stock portfolio weathered crashes by diversifying bonds, international markets, commodities. I learned options trading during night shifts, making calculated plays that paid off more than they didn't. By my 50th birthday, my net worth sat at $847,000. Nobody knew. I drove a 2008 Honda Civic with fabric seats and a busted radio, bought clothes at Target, used grocery store loyalty cards like they were lottery tickets. Our house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch, was paid off but looked like it still had a mortgage in the furniture choices. Robert and I shared the secret like a warm blanket, this hidden safety net that meant we'd never struggle like I had in my 20s. The portfolio wasn't for vacations or luxury. It was Jake's inheritance, his real future. I'd imagined the day I'd tell him, "Son, I know I worked a lot when you were young, but look, you're set. You never have to struggle like I did. This is what all those missed soccer games and quick dinners were for." I'd pictured his face. Tears, maybe. Gratitude, definitely. Understanding that every sacrifice had purpose, had built toward this moment where I could hand him security wrapped in a bow. The accounts sat in various trusts, some in my name, some joint with Robert, some in family trusts that named Jake as beneficiary. All legal, all optimized, all waiting for the right moment to reveal. Kendra had no idea her mother-in-law was worth nearly $1 million. Jake assumed I was scraping by on a nurse's salary and Robert's modest income, playing the martyr, penny pinching from necessity rather than strategy. If they'd known, truly known, would that party have gone differently? Maybe, maybe not. But they were about to find out that the woman they'd dismissed as a nagging burden had resources they'd never dreamed of, and more importantly, the knowledge of exactly how to use them. Patience. I'd learned from investing always beats panic, and revenge, I was about to prove, is just another long-term investment. The Monday after the party, I couldn't get out of bed. Robert brought me tea and toast I couldn't swallow. My phone buzzed with pitying texts. "Are you okay?" That was awful. "Call if you need anything." I turned it off. The silence felt like drowning. By Wednesday, I forced myself to function. Showered, dressed, drove to the clinic and sat through patient consultations on autopilot. Mrs. Patterson asked if I was feeling well. I lied and said allergies, but my hands shook checking her blood pressure, and I had to measure twice. That evening, my neighbor Lila knocked on the door with a casserole and information that changed everything. "Ellen, honey," she said, settling onto my couch with the gravity of someone bearing bad news. "I need to show you something." She pulled out her phone, fingers scrolling. "I didn't want to add to your pain, but you deserve to know." Screenshots. Text messages from a group chat Lila's daughter had been added to by accident. Kendra's friends, giddy with gossip. The messages dated back 3 weeks before my party. Kendra: "Time to cut the cord. I'm so done with her constant hovering." Friend: "Just avoid her?" Kendra: "No. Jake needs to man up and tell her how we all feel. Public. Make it stick." Friend: "OMG at the party? Savage." Kendra: "She's been riding him his whole life. He'll never be free unless we burn the bridge." I read them twice. 3 times. The words blurred as my hands trembled. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment drunkenness. This was premeditated, calculated. Kendra had scripted my humiliation like a marketing campaign, and Jake had delivered his lines perfectly. "There's more," Lila said quietly. She showed me Kendra's Instagram post from Sunday morning, a photo of the deflated balloons and abandoned cake, caption reading, "Family truths finally out. No more walking on eggshells. Dear freedom feels dépassé boundaries." 47 likes, comments full of "you go girl" and "toxic people don't deserve your energy," and "proud of you for speaking up." My son's wife had weaponized my pain for social media engagement. "I'm so sorry," Lila whispered, but I barely heard her. A cold clarity was settling over me like frost, freezing the hurt into something harder, something useful. Over the next week, I did what I should have done years ago, a complete financial audit of my relationship with Jake. Robert helped, spreading documents across the dining room table, highlighter squeaking against paper. The mortgage on their house, co-signed by me because Jake's income wasn't quite enough. I was legally liable for $280,000. The car lease for Kendra's SUV, my guarantee because her credit score was 580. Their health insurance, bundled with my clinic's family plan at a discount that saved them $400 monthly. Jake's job at Patterson Auto Sales, he'd gotten it because the owner, Mike Patterson, was married to a woman I'd cared for during her mother's final days at Pinewood. He'd hired Jake as a favor to me, kept him on despite mediocre performance out of respect. Even their utilities, I'd helped set up the accounts when they moved in, my credit establishing service. They'd never switched. But the worst discovery came Thursday night. Robert found irregularities in my checking account. Small withdrawals, $200 here, $150 there, always just under the threshold I'd notice. Dates going back 14 months. We traced them to Venmo transfers, to Kendra's account. Jake had access to my checking account from years ago when I'd added him for emergencies. They'd been siphoning money for over a year. Total damage, $8,140. "That's theft," Robert said, jaw tight. "We could press charges." I stared at the statements, at the proof of betrayal layered upon betrayal. My son and his wife hadn't just humiliated me. They'd been quietly robbing me, all while I smiled and wrote checks and played the doting mother. Something inside me crystallized, hardened, transformed. "Not yet," I said, "not yet." The fallout spread through our small town like oil on water, slow, dark, staining everything. By the end of the first week, I couldn't go to the grocery store without catching sympathetic glances from the produce section. Diane from church hugged me in the cereal aisle and whispered, "That boy doesn't deserve you." The pharmacist, a woman I barely knew, squeezed my hand when processing my new blood pressure prescription and said, "Family can be cruel." Because, yes, my health had crashed. The doctor's visit on day 5 revealed blood pressure at 160/100, up from my usual 118/75. She asked about stress. I laughed, and it came out like broken glass, prescribed medication, suggested therapy, told me to eliminate stressors where possible. How do you eliminate your only child? Sleep became theoretical. I'd lie awake replaying the party, Jake's words on loop. "Everyone's sick of you." At 3 a.m. they felt true. Maybe I had been too involved, too helpful, too much. But by dawn, rage would burn through the doubt. I'd given him everything, and he'd repaid me with public execution. Work suffered. I called in sick twice in 2 weeks, unprecedented for me. When I was there, I mixed up patient charts, forgot medication schedules, stood in the supply closet crying over nothing. My supervisor, gentle but firm, suggested I take family leave. "You're no good to patients like this, Ellen." The worst part? Jake's follow-up, or lack thereof. 3 days after the party, a text arrived. "Hey, Mom, sorry about Saturday. Had too much to drink. You know I didn't mean it. We cool?" That's it. 31 words, no acknowledgement of the devastation, no real apology, no awareness that he detonated my life in front of 50 people, just casual dismissal. Like he'd forgotten to take out the trash instead of taking out my heart. I didn't respond. What could I say? Robert wanted to call him, man to man, but I stopped him. Something was shifting in me, a tectonic plate moving beneath the hurt. I needed time, needed clarity, because the financial audit had revealed something Jake and Kendra didn't know. They needed me far more than I needed them. Their entire life, house, car, insurance, job, emergency funds, was built on the foundation of my support. And foundations can be removed, carefully, strategically, completely. On day 12, I sat at my kitchen table with Robert and a pot of coffee. The house silent except for the refrigerator's hum. Financial documents spread before us like battle plans. "What do you want to do?" Robert asked carefully. I knew what he was really asking. How far are you willing to go? The old Ellen, the people-pleasing, self-sacrificing, turn-the-other-cheek Ellen, would have swallowed the pain, made excuses, eventually forgiven without consequence because he's my son and family is everything. But that Ellen had died at her birthday party. This Ellen understood something clearer. Enabling cruelty isn't love, it's cowardice. "No violence," I said, finger tracing the mortgage documents. "Nothing illegal, no screaming matches or dramatic confrontations." I looked up at Robert. "They want freedom from me? They'll have it. Complete freedom. From my money, my guarantees, my safety net. They'll struggle. They'll learn." I smiled and it felt sharp. I'm going to teach them the most valuable lesson of their lives, the true cost of burning bridges. Robert studied my face, then nodded slowly. Patient, psychological, educational. Exactly. I gathered the papers, purpose flooding my veins where hurt had been. This isn't revenge, honey. This is just removing my generosity, natural consequences. If they only knew this was just the beginning. The art of revenge, I discovered, is restraint. 2 weeks post-party, I sent Jake a text. "How are you and Kendra doing? Haven't heard from you. Love, Mom." Simple, warm. The kind of message that suggested forgiveness, that maybe his pathetic apology had been enough. His response came 3 hours later. "We're good. Busy with work. Talk soon." Perfect. Let them think the storm had passed. Let them believe I'd folded like I always did. Swallowed my hurt and moved on because that's what mothers do. Meanwhile, Robert and I worked through spreadsheets like surgeons planning an operation, identifying every single thread connecting my life to theirs. "Start small," Robert advised, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Don't spook them. Make each move look like coincidence, not consequence." Smart man, my husband. Victory 1 arrived in their mailbox on a Tuesday morning, dressed in official letterhead. The mortgage company, where I'd co-signed their loan, sent a routine notice about an administrative review of co-signed properties. Perfectly legal happens all the time when primary borrowers have inconsistent payment histories. The letter explained that recent audits had revealed a $4,000 discrepancy in equity calculations that required immediate resolution to avoid lien placement. Technical jargon. Payment due in 30 days. My name listed as co-borrower contact. Jake called within an hour. "Mom, did you get this mortgage thing? What's it mean?" I kept my voice concerned, confused. "Oh, honey, yes, I don't understand it either. Something about equity? The letter says we need to pay it, though. Have you been making payments on time?" "Of course." His defensiveness was immediate, telling. "This is bullshit. It's probably a scam." "The number matches our mortgage company," I said mildly. "Maybe call them?" "I'm sure it's just paperwork. But, sweetheart, I'm stretched thin right now with medical bills from my blood pressure issues. You know, from the stress. So I can't help cover this one." Silence on his end. Heavy, thick silence. You can't front us the $4,000 just until we sort it out?" "I wish I could." The lie tasted sweet, but between my new medications and the specialist appointments, I'm barely covering my own bills. "I'm sorry, Jake. You'll figure it out." I hung up before he could argue, hands trembling with adrenaline. If she only knew this was just the appetizer. Lila reported the fallout 3 days later over coffee on my porch. Saw them loading stuff into their car yesterday. Jewelry boxes, that fancy record player Jake loved. Drove to that pawn shop on Hamilton Street. Did they get the 4,000? I asked, sipping Earl Grey. Probably close. Kendra looked ready to murder someone when they came back. Lila's eyes sparkled with schadenfreude. They'll make the payment, but it hurt. Good. Pain was educational. Victory, too, came wrapped in bureaucratic efficiency. I called my insurance company, the one bundling Jake and Kendra's car coverage with mine for a family discount, and simply asked to review my policy. My stepson is 32 now, I explained to the agent. I'm not sure he still qualifies as a dependent on my plan. Can you check? 15 minutes later. Ma'am, you're correct. Dependents over 30 are no longer eligible for family bundling. I'll remove them effective next billing cycle. Click. Done. Their insurance bill, previously $140 monthly, jumped to $320. I knew because Kendra called me, voice shrill enough to crack glass. Ellen, what did you do? Our car insurance just skyrocketed. Oh dear, what happened? I injected maximum concern into my tone. They're saying we're not on your plan anymore, that you removed us. I didn't remove anyone, sweetie. I just had them review my policy for accuracy. Apparently, you two aged out of dependent status. It's standard. I'm sure if you call them, they can set you up with your own plan. Might be a bit more expensive, but that's adulthood. I added a little laugh. Cheerful. Helpful. A bit more. She was sputtering now. It's double. We can't afford... I understand money is tight, Kendra, but after Jake's speech at my party about how much of a burden I am, I figured you two wanted independence. This is what that looks like. Still cheerful. Still helpful. The steel wrapped in velvet. She hung up on me. I smiled into my tea. Robert, reading the paper nearby, didn't look up. You're terrifying when you want to be. Thank you, darling. Victory 3 was more personal, visceral. Jake's old band equipment had been moldering in my garage for 7 years. Amplifiers, a drum kit missing 2 drums, microphone stands, a bass guitar with broken strings. He'd insisted on storing it at my place when they moved because Kendra didn't want that junk cluttering their house. I'd tripped over it monthly, squeezing past to reach holiday decorations or gardening tools. A shrine to his failed dreams, taking up space in my life like everything else about him. One Saturday morning, I posted it all on Facebook Marketplace. Free music equipment to good home, must pick up today. By noon, a grateful college kid had hauled away every piece. I donated the $2,200 I'd actually made. Listing wasn't free, but Jake didn't need to know that, to the local youth music program. Got a nice tax receipt and everything. Jake's text came at 2 p.m. Where is my equipment? Your old band stuff? Finally cleared the garage. It was taking up space, and you haven't touched it in 7 years, honey. Figured you'd moved on. You had no right. That's mine. Actually, it was in my garage, abandoned. But I'm glad you're so passionate about it. Maybe you should have stored it at your own house. I added a smiley emoji. Twist the knife gently. He called. I didn't answer. He called again. I texted, at a doctor's appointment, can't talk. Feel better soon. The voicemail he left was 40 seconds of incoherent rage. I played it for Robert over dinner, and we laughed until our sides hurt. He's starting to notice, Robert observed, spearing a green bean. Let him notice. He's got no idea how much rope I'm about to give him. I raised my wine glass. To education. To consequences, Robert corrected, clinking his glass against mine. 3 victories in 3 weeks, small, surgical, legally bulletproof, each one chipping away at their comfort while I maintained the facade of a confused, slightly scattered mother who was just handling administrative things and decluttering for my health. If they only knew this was barely the beginning. The real pain, that was still being sharpened. I slept well that night for the first time since the party. dreams filled with spreadsheets and checkbooks, and the beautiful, beautiful sound of chickens coming home to roost. Every good general needs intelligence, and Lila had become my NSA. She'd lived next door for 12 years, a retired librarian with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. Her Ring doorbell camera had a perfect view of Jake and Kendra's driveway. Not intentional surveillance, just convenient angles. The morning after my garage cleaning, she knocked on my door with coffee and evidence. "Ellen, you need to see this." She pulled up footage from the night of my party, timestamp reading 10:47 p.m. There, in grainy night vision green, stood Jake and Kendra in their driveway. Jake was laughing, actually laughing, while Kendra gestured wildly, clearly recounting the party's highlight reel. I turned up the volume, their voices carried in the quiet suburban night. "Face when you said it," Kendra's cackle. "Priceless, like someone slapped her with a fish." "Think we went too far?" Jake's voice, uncertain. "Are you kidding? You were perfect." She needed to hear it. Now maybe she'll back off and let us live. A pause. "We should celebrate. This is freedom, babe." They went inside. The camera showed champagne bottles in their recycling bin the next morning. I watched the footage 3 times, each viewing calcifying my resolve into something diamond hard. "Can you send me this?" "Already emailed." Lila squeezed my hand. "I'm Team Ellen, honey. Whatever you need." What I needed was expertise beyond neighborly support. That's where Harold came in. Harold Brennan had been my financial advisor for 8 years, a semi-retired lawyer who'd helped Robert and me structure our investments. He was 71, sharp as a tack, and had what he called a constitutional appreciation for elegant vengeance. I met him at his home office on a Thursday afternoon. Laying out the situation over scotch he insisted on pouring. "They humiliated you publicly, stole from you privately, and now want you to continue funding their lives." That's the summary. He leaned back, fingers steepled. "Ellen, I've known you nearly a decade. You're not vindictive by nature, which tells me this is justified." He pulled out a legal pad. "Let's restructure everything. Trusts, guarantees, cosigns, all legal, all above board, all devastating." Over 2 hours, we mapped out the campaign. Harold explained how to withdraw from agreements, restructure accounts, redirect trust funds. "The beauty," he said, eyes twinkling, "is that you're not attacking them. You're simply removing your support, natural consequences, as it were." "Can they sue? For what? Deciding to manage your own finances?" He chuckled. "Ellen, you've broken no laws. You're just establishing boundaries." I left his office with a 3-ring binder full of documentation, strategies, and timeline recommendations. Harold refused payment. "This one's on principle, my dear." But I sent his wife flowers anyway. Robert remained my anchor through it all. While Harold provided tactics and Lila provided intelligence, Robert provided something more valuable: moral clarity. One evening, as I plotted Victory 4, doubt crept in. Am I being cruel? Robert set down his crossword. Define cruel. Systematically dismantling my son's life. You're systematically removing your resources from someone who publicly declared you worthless. There's a difference. He took off his reading glasses. "Ellen, boundaries aren't cruelty. If Jake and Kendra can't survive without your constant support, that's a failure of their character, not your compassion. But he's my son. Who chose to humiliate you in front of 50 people rather than have an adult conversation about feeling smothered? Actions, Ellen, they have consequences. You're just the teacher." He reached over, squeezed my hand. "Boundaries save souls. Sometimes the soul that needs saving is yours." I kissed him for that. The final piece of the puzzle arrived unexpectedly on a Tuesday night. Mike, Kendra's younger brother. We'd met twice, at the wedding and at a Christmas dinner 3 years ago. Nice kid, mid-20s, worked in IT, seemed uncomfortable with his sister's brash personality. I'd liked him. He called my cell at 9 p.m., voice slurred with alcohol and guilt. "Mrs. Patterson, it's Mike, Kendra's brother. I need to tell you something." Mike? Are you all right? No. Yes. I don't know. A deep breath. Look, what happened at your party was fucked up. Sorry, excuse my language, but Kendra planned it. She's been working on Jake for months, telling him you're manipulative, that you control him, that he'll never be a man while you're involved. My hand tightened on the phone. Go on. She's cheating on him. The words tumbled out fast now. With her boss. Has been for 6 months. Jake doesn't know, and she's planning to divorce him once she gets what she wants from your family money. She thinks you're loaded and hiding it. Bingo. The affair confirmed what I'd suspected from Kendra's increasingly expensive Instagram posts, despite their money troubles. And the party? I prompted. She told me after, drunk, bragging. Said Jake finally grew balls and put you in your place. That you're all sitting around later that night laughing, doing shots. His voice cracked. I love my sister, but that was evil. You've always been nice to me. I couldn't keep quiet. Mike, thank you. This means more than you know. Don't tell her I called. Please. She can be vindictive. Your secret's safe. I paused. How are you doing? Sounds like you've had a rough night. We talked for 20 more minutes. I gave him resources for Al-Anon. His sister's behavior was clearly affecting him and made him promise to call if he needed anything. When we hung up, I had confirmation. Kendra was the architect, Jake was the weapon, and both had celebrated my destruction. The affair was bonus intel, a grenade I'd save for the perfect moment. I texted Harold, need to discuss trust restructuring urgently. Texted Lila, coffee tomorrow? Have news. Walked into the living room where Robert was watching television. They're worse than I thought. He muted the TV. How much worse? I told him everything. When I finished, his jaw was tight. What do you need from me? Just keep being my conscience. Tell me if I go too far. Ellen. He stood, pulling me into a hug. You couldn't go too far if you tried. You're the most decent person I know, which is why this hurts so much. They exploited your goodness. He pulled back, hands on my shoulders. Teach them. They've earned the education. With my team assembled, the witness, the enabler, the anchor, and the rat, I felt invincible. They'd built their lives on my foundation. Time to see how they fared when the ground started shifting beneath them. Month 2 began with surgical precision. Jake and Kendra lived in a rental house. Their dream home purchase had fallen through when the equity payment drained their savings, in a quiet neighborhood. According to property records Harold pulled, their landlord was a retired couple named the Hendersons who lived in Florida and preferred minimal tenant interaction. Perfect. I drafted an anonymous email from a concerned neighbor detailing noise complaints, late-night arguments, loud music, a barking dog. All true. Lila had documented every incident. The email was polite, apologetic, but firm. The disturbances are affecting property values and neighborhood peace. The Hendersons responded within days with an official warning notice. Any further complaints will result in lease termination. Kendra posted about it on Instagram. Seriously? Neighbors from hell reporting us for living our lives. This neighborhood is toxic. Victory 4. Complete. The pressure valve turned slightly tighter. Victory 5 required delicate timing. Years ago, I'd helped Jake set up a joint savings account for emergencies. My name's still on it as co-owner, though I hadn't touched it. The current balance sat at $2,100, money they'd scraped together for a vacation to Miami they'd been posting about for weeks. Harold walked me through the withdrawal process. Legally, as co-owner, you can remove funds, leave a paper trail showing it was transferred to a documented charity, squeaky clean. I withdrew $2,000, leaving $100. Transferred it to the Alzheimer's Association in memory of my mother. Tax deductible, ethical, devastating. Jake's call came at 7 a.m. the next morning. Mom, did you take money from our savings? Good morning to you too, honey. What money? The savings account, there's only $100 left. Oh, I let realization dawn in my voice. Jake, that's the joint account from when you were 25. I thought you'd closed it years ago. I transferred the unused funds to charity, Mom's Alzheimer's research. Was that yours? Genuine confusion. Innocent mistake. That was for our vacation. Sweetie, why would you keep vacation money in an old account with my name on it? That seems like poor financial planning. Gentle chiding, mother knows best tone. You should set up your own savings separate from me. Weren't you saying how you wanted independence? You stole our vacation. I donated unused funds from my account to a worthy cause. If you had money you needed, you should have said something. Pause. Actually, didn't you say at my party that I was a burden you just tolerate? So I'm confused why you'd keep shared accounts with someone you barely tolerate. Mixed messages, Jake. He hung up. I poured another coffee, hands steady as stone. Miami trip. Canceled. Kendra's Instagram story that night was a wine glass and the caption, "When life keeps kicking you." If she only knew I was wearing steel-toed boots. Victory 6 was Harold's masterpiece. Kendra's SUV, a lease she couldn't actually afford, had my signature as guarantor from 3 years ago when her credit couldn't qualify solo. Harold filed paperwork to withdraw as guarantor, citing changed financial circumstances, which was legally permitted with 30-day notice to the lender. The lender recalculated Kendra's solo creditworthiness. She failed. 31 days later, a tow truck appeared in their driveway at 6 a.m. Lila texted me the play-by-play. "Ellen, you should see this. Kendra is screaming at the tow truck driver, like full-on meltdown. Jake came out in boxers trying to argue. They're hooking up the SUV now. Oh my God." She just threw her coffee at the truck. I felt a twinge, not of guilt, but of satisfaction so pure, it was almost spiritual. Kendra called me 10 minutes later, sobbing. "Ellen, they're taking my car. You have to stop them." "Sweetheart, what happened?" They said you're not the guarantor anymore and my credit isn't good enough and they're repossessing it." "Oh no, that's awful," I loaded my voice with sympathy. "Why would they remove me as guarantor?" "Because you withdrew," she was shrieking now. "I requested a financial review of all my obligations because of my medical expenses. The lender made their own decision based on your credit, honey. That's between you and them. You did this on purpose." "Kendra." Ice entered my tone. "I did nothing except manage my own finances after being publicly told I'm a burden everyone's sick of. Maybe if you and Jake hadn't spent my birthday party humiliating me, we'd still have the relationship where I'd guarantee your loans. But you wanted independence. Congratulations. You have it." I hung up before she could respond. The car disappeared down the street. They were down to Jake's 15-year-old pickup truck, the one with the broken air conditioning and a passenger door held shut with zip ties. Perfect. Victory 7 targeted Jake's employment. Mike Patterson, the auto dealership owner who'd hired Jake as a favor to me, was a decent man running an honest business. Over the years, I'd heard Jake complain about the job. Boring, low commissions, Mike's unreasonable expectations about punctuality and sales quotas. I'd also noticed, during my brief visits to bring Jake lunch, certain irregularities. Sales logged without proper documentation, customer complaints about miscommunications on pricing, nothing egregious enough for termination, but enough to make a competent manager take notice. I called Mike under the guise of checking in. We'd remained friendly after his wife's mother passed. "Mike, how's business?" "Ellen, good to hear from you. Business is steady. How are you holding up? Heard things were tough with Jake." "I'm managing." "Actually, Mike, I wanted to apologize in advance. If Jake's personal issues are affecting his work, please don't keep him on out of kindness to me. I'd hate for our friendship to complicate your business." "Appreciate that, Ellen, to be honest." He sighed. "I've been meaning to talk to him about some sales report discrepancies. Haven't wanted to seem like I'm piling on during his family troubles." "Mike, treat him like any other employee. He's an adult. I'm not asking for favors anymore." "Understood." 2 weeks later, Jake was demoted from senior sales associate to lot attendant. Pay cut from $45,000 to $32,000 annually. He texted me a rant about unfair treatment and discrimination. I responded, "Have you considered that your job performance might be the issue? Maybe less time complaining about your mother and more time working would help." No response. Victories 8 and 9 came rapid fire. Jake's hours got cut at the dealership, Mike's decision. But I didn't discourage it when he mentioned in passing that Jake seems distracted lately. Fewer hours meant less income, meant no employer health insurance. When Kendra went to the ER 3 weeks later with a migraine, stress-induced, I'm sure, the bill came back at $3,200. She called me from the hospital parking lot. "Ellen, we can't afford this, please. I know we've had issues, but I'm in pain and we have no insurance and—" "Did you go to the ER for a migraine?" I interrupted. "It was really bad. I thought it was a stroke." "Kendra, you're 28. Strokes are rare at your age. You should have gone to urgent care, fraction of the cost. But that's what happens when you don't have insurance, sweetie. You learn to make smarter healthcare choices. Can you help us pay?" "No. Simple. Final. I'm not your bank anymore. You two made that clear at my party." "That was Jake, not me. You posted about it on Instagram calling it freedom. So be free, pay your own bills." I hung up. Lila reported they set up a payment plan, $200 monthly. It'd take them 16 months to pay off one ER visit. Educational. The real knife twist? Watching Kendra's Instagram transformation. Her feed had been designer bags, restaurant check-ins, influencer-style selfies with captions about living your best life. Post-party, it shifted. Week 6. Sometimes life throws curveballs, rolling with it. Week 8. Learning that less is more. Minimalism. Growth mindset. Week 10. Real friends show up when times are hard. Thank you to everyone who supported us. Week 12. Struggling but surviving. If you can help, link in bio. She'd added a GoFundMe for unexpected expenses. The GoFundMe raised $340 from her friends, the same ones who'd liked her Family Truths Finally Out post. I didn't donate, but I did screenshot everything. Evidence of their decline, documented in their own words, time-stamped and public. Harold suggested keeping records. You never know when you'll need proof of consequences. By month 3, they'd been evicted from the rental house, noise complaints plus late rent, moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, lost the SUV, lost health insurance, taken pay cuts, and were drowning in unexpected bills. And I hadn't broken a single law, hadn't sent a single threatening message, hadn't done anything except stop being their safety net. Natural consequences, as Harold called them. Gravity, as I thought of it. They'd climbed high on the ladder I'd built, then spent my birthday party sawing through the rungs. Now they were discovering what happens when ladders collapse. If they only knew, this was still the shallow end of the pool. The real drowning hadn't even started yet. Month 4 was when I stopped being merciful and started being creative. Credit scores are delicate ecosystems. 1 or 2 late payments can drop them 50 points. Multiple delinquencies, missed bills, and maxed credit cards? That's a death spiral. Jake and Kendra's score had been mediocre before. Kendra's hovered around 590, Jake's at 640. Not great, but functional. I'd co-signed or guaranteed several of their accounts over the years. That old apartment lease, a furniture store credit card, the ill-fated car loan. As those obligations went unpaid or late, because of course they did now that money was tight, I reported the delinquencies, not vindictively, just accurately, as any co-signer has the legal right to do when their own credit is at risk. Jake's score dropped to 580. Kendra's plummeted to 510. They tried to lease a newer used car to replace the repossessed SUV. Denied. Applied for a credit card to consolidate debt. Denied. Even their apartment application for a better place, trying to escape the cramped 2-bedroom, got rejected. Jake called, voice hollow. "Mom, our credit is destroyed. We can't get approved for anything." "Oh, honey, that's terrible. Have you been paying bills on time?" "We're trying, but everything's so expensive and we're behind on—" Well, there's your answer. Credit reflects responsibility. Maybe this is a learning opportunity about financial management. I paused. Didn't you and Kendra want to handle things yourselves? This is what that looks like. I'm asking for help, not a lecture. And I'm giving you advice which apparently makes me a burden, so I'm confused what you want from me, Jake. Silence then. Forget it. Click. Kendra's job situation unraveled beautifully. She worked as a marketing assistant at a small firm. Nothing special, but steady income. Her boss, Sharon, happened to be the niece of one of my clinic patients, a sweet woman with diabetes I'd been monitoring for years. During a routine appointment, the patient mentioned her niece was hiring for a better position at her marketing firm. Sharon's looking for someone with experience. Know anyone? Actually, I said, taking her blood pressure, my daughter-in-law works in marketing, Kendra, but I'm not sure she's looking for new opportunities. Oh, Kendra. Sharon mentions her sometimes, says well, she didn't say this directly, but reading between the lines, there might be performance issues. I made sympathetic noises. That's unfortunate. I'd hate to recommend someone unreliable. Professional reputations matter. The patient nodded knowingly. 2 weeks later, Kendra was fired for inconsistent performance and attitude issues. She posted a vague book on Instagram, "When you realize not everyone has your back. Trust no one." She didn't know I'd done nothing except not defend her. Sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. The family trust was my nuclear option, and I deployed it with Harold's blessing. For years, I'd maintained a trust fund, $120,000, that named Jake as primary beneficiary upon my death. He didn't know the exact amount, but he knew it existed. I'd mentioned it once during a conversation about legacy planning. "Don't worry, honey, you'll be taken care of." He'd assumed it was his, an inheritance locked away, waiting. Harold restructured it entirely. The trust still existed, but the beneficiaries changed. 40% to Robert, 30% to Timmy's education fund, 30% distributed among charities I'd selected. Jake's name appeared nowhere. I sent Jake a letter, certified mail, formal, explaining the change. "Dear Jake, after careful consideration and consultation with my financial advisor, I've restructured my estate planning to reflect my current values and relationships. The family trust previously earmarked for your inheritance has been redirected to causes that align with my priorities: elder care, Alzheimer's research, and education for future generations. This decision was made in light of recent events that demonstrated a fundamental disconnect between your perception of our relationship and my role in your life. If I am, as you stated publicly, a burden everyone is sick of, it seems inappropriate to burden you with an inheritance as well. Donations will be made in your name to the following organizations." I listed them: Pinewood Retirement Home, the Alzheimer's Association, the Youth Music Program. Every charity a deliberate choice, a mirror to his cruelty or my sacrifices. The letter concluded, "I hope these organizations benefit from resources you've decided you don't need. Live well, Jake." No love, no mom. Just my name, Ellen Patterson. He showed up at my door at 11 p.m. the day he received it. "You can't do this," screaming on my porch, waving the letter. "That's my inheritance." Robert appeared behind me, phone in hand. "Jake, it's late. You're disturbing the neighbors." "I don't care. She's stealing my future." I stayed calm, voice level. "Jake, you don't inherit from someone you publicly despise. That money was a gift I was planning to give. Gifts can be revoked, especially by burdens." I didn't mean, "Yes, you did. You meant every word at that party. Kendra planned it, you delivered it, and you both celebrated it afterward. I have video evidence of you laughing about it." I pulled out my phone, showed him Lila's doorbell footage. His face went white. "So no, Jake, you don't get my money, my support, or my mercy anymore. You get consequences." "Mom, Ellen, call me Ellen. Mothers don't humiliate their children in public, and children who do that to their mothers don't get to claim inheritance." I stepped back. "Good night, Jake. Don't come back unless you're ready to have an adult conversation about accountability." Robert closed the door. We watched through the window as Jake stood on the porch, crumpling the letter in his fist, shoulders shaking. Crying or raging, I couldn't tell, didn't care. That was harsh, Robert said quietly. That was necessary. The final touch, the cabin. Our family had a small lakeside cabin 3 hours north, technically my property inherited from my aunt. Jake and Kendra had used it freely for weekend getaways, fishing trips, their honeymoon before Cancun. Photos of them in front of the fireplace filled their social media. Lake life, sea, family, cabin, blessed. I listed it for sale on a Wednesday. By Friday, I had an offer, $185,000, all cash. Accepted. I texted Jake, sold the cabin, needed funds for retirement planning. I'm sure you understand. His response took an hour. What? That's been in our family for years. Your family, maybe? My property? And since you're sick of me being in your life, I figured you wouldn't want to use my cabin anymore anyway. Boundaries, Jake. You wanted them. He didn't respond. Lila reported that Kendra cried for 2 days. She's telling people you're vindictive and cruel, Lila said, taking away their safe space. Their safe space was my property they used for free. Oh, I know, just reporting. Lila grinned. You're terrifying and I love it. By month 5, their marriage was visibly fracturing. Lila's doorbell cam caught arguments spilling into the driveway. Jake's drinking had increased, bottles clinking in their recycling. Kendra was gone frequently, working late according to her sparse Instagram updates. Mike had texted me confirming the affair was ongoing. She's not even hiding it anymore. Jake's in denial. I waited. Patience was my superpower now. The pressure was building. Credit destroyed, jobs lost or diminished, home downsized, car repossessed, inheritance revoked, cabin sold. Every pillar of their comfortable life systematically removed. And I'd done it all from behind a mask of concerned motherly advice and unfortunate coincidences. If they suspected I was orchestrating it, they had no proof. Just a string of bad luck and their own poor decisions catching up to them. Harold called it elegant. Robert called it just. Lila called it poetic. I called it education. Class was still in session and the final exam was approaching. Through all of this, one face haunted me. Timmy. My grandson, 4 years old with Jake's eyes and my mother's smile. Innocent in all of this ugliness, caught between warring adults who should have known better. I'd seen him 3 times since the party, brief, awkward visits where Kendra hovered and Jake avoided eye contact, and each time my heart broke a little more. He didn't understand why Grandma wasn't coming to visit as much, why Mommy and Daddy fought all the time, why they'd moved to a smaller apartment where he had to share a room with laundry. I couldn't let my war with his parents damage him. Harold and I spent an afternoon setting up an irrevocable $529 college savings plan, funded with $50,000 from my portfolio. The account named Timmy as sole beneficiary, with Robert and me as custodians. Jake and Kendra couldn't touch it, couldn't borrow against it, couldn't do anything except watch it grow for their son's future. This protects him, Harold explained, even if everything else falls apart. I added a provision. Upon Timmy's 18th birthday, he'd receive a letter I'd written explaining the fund's origins, my hopes for his education, and a gentle explanation that grandparents sometimes have to protect grandchildren from their parents' poor choices. Not cruel, just honest. I called Jake on a Tuesday evening. I need to talk to you and Kendra about Timmy. What about him? Suspicion colored every word now. Can you come over Saturday? 2 o'clock? They arrived looking haggard. Kendra's designer clothes replaced with Target basics, Jake's beard unkempt. They sat on my couch like defendants awaiting sentencing. I poured coffee, neither of them touched. I've set up a college fund for Timmy, I began. $50,000 invested conservatively, untouchable until he's 18. It's for his education, tuition, books, housing, not for you. Kendra's eyes went wide. 50,000, not for you, I repeated. This is about protecting my grandson's future from whatever happens between us. The account is irrevocable. I'm the custodian. When he's old enough, he'll have options you two are currently destroying for him." Jake's face crumpled. "Mom, Ellen," I corrected. "And before you ask, no, you can't borrow against it. No. You can't have it now for emergencies. This is Timmy's money, period." "Why are you doing this?" Kendra whispered. "Because unlike you two, I understand that children shouldn't suffer for their parents' failures." I met her eyes. "Timmy didn't ask to be born into this mess. He deserves stability, education, opportunity. Since you're clearly incapable of providing that, I will." "We're trying," Jake started. "You're failing. Both of you. Your marriage is collapsing, your finances are in shambles, and you're too busy blaming me to take responsibility." I softened slightly. Just enough. "But Timmy is innocent, and I will not let him become collateral damage in your train wreck." They left 20 minutes later, shell-shocked. I also did something they didn't know about, consulted a family lawyer about custody contingencies. "If they divorce," I asked, "what are Timmy's options?" The lawyer explained grandparent rights, custody considerations, best interest standards. Given the mother's affair and financial instability, the father would likely get primary custody, but you could petition for visitation rights regardless. What if I wanted to help Jake document Kendra's infidelity for custody purposes? That would be strategic. Do you have evidence? I showed her Mike's texts, Kendra's suspicious Instagram posts, the late-night absences Lila had documented. This would help Jake significantly in a custody battle. I had copies made, stored in a safe deposit box. Insurance, in case Kendra tried to take Timmy in a divorce and disappear. Jake was a terrible son, but he was still Timmy's father, and between the two of them, he was the more stable option. Barely, but still. The next time I saw Timmy was at a park, neutral territory. I'd texted Jake, "Can I take Timmy for ice cream? Just the two of us, 1 hour." To my surprise, he agreed. Timmy ran to me, shouting, "Grandma!" with pure joy, and I scooped him up, breathing in his little boy smell of grass and sunshine. We got chocolate cones and sat on a bench. "Are you and Mommy and Daddy fighting?" he asked, chocolate smeared on his chin. "Grown-ups sometimes disagree, buddy, but that has nothing to do with you. I love you very, very much." "Even if Mommy says you're mean." My chest tightened. "Even then, and someday when you're bigger, you'll understand everything. But right now, you just need to know. Grandma's got your back. Always." He hugged me, sticky hands and all. Whatever else happened, I'd make sure Timmy was okay. That was the line I wouldn't cross. I'd burn Jake and Kendra's world down, but I'd shelter their son from the flames. That wasn't revenge. That was love. Month 6 brought the confrontations I'd been engineering. The first happened accidentally, or as accidentally as anything happens in a town where everyone shops at the same grocery store. I was in the produce section, squeezing avocados, when Jake appeared at the end of the aisle. He looked terrible. Weight loss, dark circles, clothes hanging loose. For a split second, I felt something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered the party, the laughter, the champagne toast to my humiliation. He saw me, froze, then walked over like a man approaching the gallows. "Mom," his voice cracked on the word. "Ellen, whatever, can we talk?" I examined a tomato. "We're talking. I mean, really talk. They're really bad. Kendra and I are drowning. We need help." "Define help." I kept my eyes on the produce, voice neutral. "Money, a loan, something. We're 3 months behind on rent. I'm working 2 jobs now, and we can't—" He ran a hand through greasy hair. "We're going to lose everything." I finally looked at him. Really looked. Saw the desperation, the exhaustion, the fear, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Jake, on my 50th birthday, you stood in front of 50 people and announced that everyone was sick of me, that I was a burden you all just tolerated. Do you remember that?" I was drunk. "You were scripted. Kendra planned it for weeks. You celebrated it afterward with champagne." I stepped closer. "You wanted independence from your burden of a mother. Congratulations. You have it. You're independent. So handle your own problems like the adult you claim to be. Mom, please. No. The word landed like a judge's gavel. You made your choice at that party. Now you live with it. I'm done being your safety net, your ATM, your scapegoat. You're drowning? Swim or don't, but I'm not throwing you a rope. I pushed my cart past him. He called after me. Everyone was right. You are heartless. I didn't turn around, but I smiled. If they only knew how much heart it took to walk away from your drowning child when every instinct screamed to save him. That was strength, not heartlessness. Confrontation too. I orchestrated with more finesse. I invited them to dinner. Let's try to reconcile for Timmy's sake. And cooked Jake's favorite meal, pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. The smell filled the house, nostalgic and weaponized. They arrived separately. Kendra 20 minutes late, face pinched with resentment. We sat at the dining room table like strangers at a funeral. Thank you for coming, I started, passing the roast. I know things have been difficult. Difficult? Kendra laughed bitterly. That's one word for it. I wanted to discuss the family cabin, I continued smoothly. Since I sold it. You sold it? Jake's fork clattered. You said you were thinking about it. I sold it 3 months ago, closed last week actually. Got $185,000, which I'm investing for my retirement. I smiled pleasantly. Robert and I are thinking of traveling, maybe Europe. We've never been. Kendra's hands balled into fists. That cabin was ours. No, dear, it was mine. You used it with my permission. Permission I've revoked, along with the property itself. I sipped my wine. Just like this house will eventually sell when Robert and I downsize. You shouldn't count on family property that isn't yours. You're doing this on purpose, Kendra exploded. Everything. The car, the insurance, the cabin, the trust fund. You're systematically destroying us. I set down my glass, let the silence stretch. Then, quietly, I'm not destroying anything, Kendra. I'm simply removing my resources from people who told me I was a burden they were sick of. You wanted me out of your lives. I'm honoring that request. We didn't mean, Jake started. Yes, you did. My voice rose, control slipping just enough to let them see the fury beneath. You meant it. Kendra planned it. You delivered it. You both celebrated it. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know, then toasted your freedom from me with champagne. Jake went pale. How do you know about the champagne, the celebration, the texts planning my public execution? I pulled out my phone, showed them Lila's doorbell footage, screenshots of Kendra's group chat. I know everything, the affair, the theft from my accounts, all of it. Kendra stood up, chair scraping. You've been spying on us? No, dear. I've been watching you publicly destroy yourselves after you privately destroyed me. I stood too, facing them both. You wanted to cut me out? Fine. But you don't get to keep the benefits of having me in your lives while treating me like garbage. That's not how this works. What do you want from us? Jake shouted. Nothing anymore. That's the point. I wanted a son who valued me. A daughter-in-law who respected me. A family that didn't weaponize my love. But I can't have those things, so I'll settle for distance and boundaries. You're being cruel, Kendra hissed. I'm being honest. There's a difference. I gathered their untouched plates. Dinner's over. You should go. They left in a storm of slammed doors and shouted accusations. Robert emerged from his study where he'd been strategically absent. How'd it go? They know I know, and they're terrified. Good. He kissed my forehead. They should be. The third confrontation happened at a coffee shop 2 weeks later. Kendra's request, surprisingly. She showed up alone, makeup imperfect, designer purse replaced with a canvas tote, ordered black coffee instead of her usual $7 latte. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sitting across from me. You said it was important. She fidgeted with her cup. I want to apologize. For the party, for the texts, for everything. I waited. Things have been really hard since then. Jake's depressed. We're fighting constantly. Money's impossible. She looked up, eyes wet. I made a mistake. I pushed him to do something cruel because I was jealous of your relationship, and now everything's falling apart. Are you apologizing because you're sorry or because you want something? Her face flushed. Both. I am sorry. Genuinely. And yes, we need help. No. Ellen, please. Kendra, you orchestrated my public humiliation because you were jealous. Not angry, not defensive, jealous. You saw my bond with my son as competition, so you destroyed it. I leaned forward. That's not a mistake, that's cruelty. And now you're facing consequences. And you're sorry. But you're not sorry for hurting me. You're sorry you're suffering. That's not— It is. If everything was still fine, if Jake still had his inheritance and the cabin and my support, you wouldn't be here apologizing. You'd still be posting on Instagram about boundaries and freedom. I stood. You're exposed, Kendra. Your affair, your manipulation, your theft, and your marriage is next. I give it 3 months. How did you— Your brother Mike. He called me drunk and guilty, told me everything. I grabbed my purse. When you divorce, Jake, and you will, remember that I have documentation of your infidelity and instability. If you try to take Timmy from his father, I'll make sure every judge in the state knows exactly who you are. I left her sitting there, coffee going cold, mask finally cracked. Walking to my car, I felt lighter. The confrontations weren't satisfying in themselves. They were mile markers, proof that the plan was working, that every decision, every withdrawn support, every consequence was adding up to something they couldn't ignore anymore. They were breaking. I could see it in Jake's hollow eyes, Kendra's desperate apology, their marriage's visible fractures. The question wasn't if they'd shatter completely, it was when. And I had a front row seat to watch it happen. 8 months after the party that shattered everything, I sent Jake a text. We need to talk about Timmy's trust fund. Important updates. Come over Saturday at 2 p.m. Bring Kendra. His response came within minutes. Okay. No argument, no excuses. That told me everything about how far they'd fallen. Saturday dawned clear and cold. November wind stripping the last leaves from the oak tree in my backyard. I spent the morning preparing. Not food, but evidence. Harold had helped me compile everything into a single leather portfolio, organized with tabs and highlights like a prosecutor's case file. Bank statements showing the theft, $8,340 stolen over 14 months. Text screenshots from Kendra's group chat. Time to cut the cord. Make it public. Make it stick. Mike's written statement about the affair, signed and notarized. Lila's doorbell footage. Jake and Kendra laughing, celebrating, toasting with champagne at 10:47 p.m. the night of my party. Additional documentation. Credit reports, loan defaults, my official withdrawal from every co-signed agreement. The complete record of their betrayal and my systematic response. Robert made coffee, his quiet presence anchoring me. You sure about this? It's time. I straightened the portfolio on the dining room table. They need to see the whole picture, understand what they did and what it cost them. Lila arrived at 1:30, letting herself in through the back door. Wouldn't miss this for the world, she said, settling into the kitchen with Robert. I brought popcorn. Lila, Robert's tone was gently chiding. What? This is better than cable. At 1:50, Timmy arrived with them. I'd arranged for my neighbor's teenage daughter to watch him in the backyard, away from what was coming. He ran to hug me, all innocence and joy, and my heart squeezed. Whatever happened in the next hour, he'd be protected from it. Grandma, can I play on the swing? Of course, buddy. Emily's gonna push you. I'll bring cookies out later. I watched through the window as he raced to the swing set, his laughter carrying on the wind. That's what this was really about. Protecting him, teaching his parents what they should have already known. Jake and Kendra arrived at 2:03, both looking like they'd aged 5 years. Jake's clothes hung loose. He'd lost maybe 20 pounds. Kendra's hair needed touching up, roots showing gray she'd never let show before. They shuffled in like prisoners awaiting sentencing. Where's Timmy? Kendra asked immediately. playing outside with a sitter. This conversation is for adults only." I gestured to the dining room table. "Sit." They sat. I remained standing, the portfolio in front of me like a shield and a sword. Robert and Lila stayed in the kitchen, witnesses to what came next. "You're wondering why I called you here," I began, voice steady. "You're hoping it's to announce I'm releasing more money from Timmy's trust for your use, or maybe to tell you I've forgiven everything and we can go back to how things were." Jake opened his mouth. I raised a hand. "Let me be clear, neither of those things is happening. What is happening is I'm going to show you, comprehensively, what you did to me and what it cost you. And you're going to sit there and absorb every word." I opened the portfolio. "Let's start with theft." I slid the bank statements across the table. 14 months of unauthorized withdrawals from my checking account. Small amounts, $150 here, $200 there, always just under the threshold I'd noticed during casual reviews. Total, 8,340s. Jake, you had account access for emergencies. Kendra, you received the Venmo transfers. This is called embezzlement. Kendra's face went white. Jake stared at the statements like they might spontaneously combust. Next, premeditated humiliation. The text screenshots. Kendra's group chat 3 weeks before my birthday, planning in detail how to publicly destroy me at my own party. Jake, she coached you on what to say, made it a performance. And here, I showed them Lila's footage on my tablet, is you two celebrating afterward. Champagne toast to your freedom from the burden of me. The video played. Their laughter, Kendra's gleeful recount, Jake's complicity. When it finished, Jake was crying silently. The affair. Mike's statement. Your brother was kind enough to provide details, Kendra. 6 months with your boss, Marcus. Hotel receipts, text evidence, witness statements. All documented, all admissible in divorce court. Kendra's hands shook. You had no right. I had every right. You destroyed my life publicly. I simply documented you destroying your own privately. I kept going, relentless. The theft you both committed, the lies you told, the manipulation you orchestrated, every single piece is here, organized, legal, and provable. I closed the portfolio with a decisive snap. Jake, 8 months ago you shouted that everyone was sick of me, that I was a burden you all just tolerated. Tell me. I leaned forward, voice dropping to something cold and precise. Do you feel it now? The sickness? The burden? Because from where I'm standing, you two have been drowning for months while I watched from the shore. Jake's face crumpled completely. Tears streamed. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was drunk, and Kendra said, I didn't mean any of it. Stop. The word cracked like a whip. You did mean it. Maybe not the depth of it, maybe not all the words, but you meant the sentiment. You resented me, felt smothered, wanted me gone. So I left, removed every ounce of support I'd provided for 32 years, and look what happened. You destroyed us, Kendra screamed, standing so fast her chair tipped backward. You vindictive bitch! You systematically ruined our lives out of spite. I stood too, met her fury with ice. I destroyed nothing, Kendra. You two destroyed yourselves. I just stopped enabling it. I slammed my hand on the table. Crack. And they both jumped. Every consequence you faced was natural. You couldn't afford the house? That's because you never could. I was subsidizing it. Lost the car. Your credit was always terrible. I was guaranteeing it. Jake got demoted. His job performance was always mediocre. Mike kept him on as a favor to me. Your marriage is failing. That's the affair you chose and the financial stress you created. My voice rose. Months of controlled fury finally unleashed. I didn't destroy you. I revealed you, showed the world, showed you what you actually are without my constant support propping up your illusions. And you know what? You're exactly what I feared. Ungrateful, entitled, weak. Jake was sobbing openly now. Kendra stood frozen, tears cutting tracks through her makeup. "But here's what you don't understand," I said, voice returning to that deadly calm. "This wasn't revenge. This was education. I taught you the single most valuable lesson of your lives. Actions have consequences. Bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with apologies alone. And mothers, even burden mothers you're sick of, are human beings who deserve dignity." I gathered the portfolio. "There's one more thing you need to know. I'm pressing charges for the theft. My lawyer has already filed. You'll both be facing restitution and probation at minimum." "You can't," Kendra started. "I can. I am. And before you think about fighting it, remember, I have receipts for everything. Bank records, timestamps, your own text messages admitting to it. You'll lose in court, rack up legal fees you can't afford, and still end up with criminal records." I walked to the door, opened it. "Get out of my house. You'll hear from my lawyer next week." They stumbled out, shattered and exposed, the ruins of their arrogance scattered across my dining room table. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding, hands shaking with adrenaline. Robert appeared with a glass of wine. Lila was grinning. "That," Lila said, "was the most magnificent thing I've ever witnessed." I took the wine, drained half of it, and started laughing. Couldn't stop. Months of planning, executing, waiting, all culminating in those perfect, devastating 30 minutes. "How do you feel?" Robert asked. "Victorious," I said, and meant it. The dominoes fell faster after that. Within a week, my lawyer filed formal theft charges. The prosecutor, a woman I'd met at a charity fundraiser coincidentally, found the case straightforward. Clear paper trail, documented access, admissions in writing. They'll take a plea deal. They did. Jake and Kendra both pleaded guilty to misdemeanor theft. The judge, an older man with no patience for entitled millennials, was unimpressed by their excuses. "You stole from your own mother?" he said, reading the case file. $8,000 over 14 months from the woman who raised you, supported you, co-signed your loans. Jake mumbled something inaudible. "Speak up." "Yes, Your Honor, I did." The sentence, 2 years probation, 200 hours community service each, and mandatory restitution of $8,340 plus interest, $9,200 total, payable at $300 monthly. Failure to pay would mean jail time. Their criminal records were now permanent. Background checks would show theft convictions. Job applications would be harder. Apartment rentals would require explanations. Legal consequences, documented and sealed. Financially, the collapse was total. Without my co-signature, their rental house had been a ticking time bomb. 3 months behind on rent, eviction proceedings started. They moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in the cheapest part of town, $600 monthly, shared bathroom down the hall, the kind of place I'd lived in 30 years ago when I was actually poor. Jake's truck, barely running, became their only vehicle. Kendra took the bus to job interviews. The credit damage was catastrophic. Scores in the 400s meant no loans, no credit cards, no financing anything. They'd be rebuilding for years. I'd successfully removed every financial safety net I'd ever provided. They were free falling, and the ground was coming up fast. Employment-wise, Jake's situation deteriorated completely. Mike Patterson, finally fed up with Jake's absenteeism and attitude problems, fired him after the criminal charges became public. "Can't have someone with theft convictions selling cars. It's a trust issue," Mike explained when I called to thank him for the years of patience. Jake found work as a warehouse loader at $13 an hour. Manual labor, overnight shifts, the kind of job that breaks your back and your spirit. Exactly the kind of work I'd done to support him as a child. Poetic. Kendra's job prospects vanished when her affair became office gossip. Marcus, her boss and paramour, was married. His wife found out. I may have anonymously sent her some documentation, and the resulting workplace scandal got them both fired. Kendra now worked retail at Target, folding clothes and scanning groceries for $12.50 an hour. Combined, they made about $50,000 annually in a high cost of living area. with restitution payments, probation fees, and Timmy's needs. They were surviving, barely, exactly as I'd planned. The marriage didn't survive at all. 2 months after the confrontation, Kendra filed for divorce. The affair was cited along with irreconcilable differences and financial stress. She tried to take Timmy, arguing Jake's instability made him unfit. That's when I deployed my final weapon, the documentation I'd prepared months ago. Harold presented the family court with evidence of Kendra's affair, her manipulation, her role in the theft, her unstable employment history. We provided Mike's statement, hotel receipts, witness testimony about her absence from Timmy's life while pursuing her boss. Meanwhile, I wrote a letter supporting Jake, carefully worded to acknowledge his failures while noting his genuine love for Timmy and his recent efforts toward rehabilitation. The judge awarded primary custody to Jake. Kendra got supervised visitation every other weekend. She moved back in with her parents 3 counties away. I heard through Mike she was working at a grocery store there, living in her childhood bedroom at 33, bitter and broke. I felt nothing. Not sympathy, not satisfaction, just neutrality. She'd made her choices. These were her consequences. Socially, the town's verdict was unanimous. Lila's network of friends, the book club, the church ladies, the neighborhood association, spread the true story like wildfire. Not gossip, but facts. The theft charges, the affair, the premeditated party humiliation. Jake's friends distanced themselves. The guys he'd played poker with stopped calling. The couples who'd done double dates with him and Kendra quietly unfriended them on social media. Extended family rallied around me. My cousin in Ohio called to express outrage. Robert's sister sent flowers and a card. Family protects family. You did right. Even people who'd initially pitied Jake, it's so sad he's struggling, changed their tune when the theft charges became public. He stole from his own mother? That's unforgivable. The court of public opinion had rendered its judgment. I was the victim, they were the villains, and justice had been served. 8 months of systematic dismantling had resulted in complete, undeniable, legally documented consequences. They'd wanted freedom from me? They got it. Along with poverty, criminal records, divorce, and social exile. Be careful what you wish for. While their lives crumbled, mine flourished. My portfolio, carefully managed through the chaos, had grown to $920,000. The restitution payments added $300 monthly, small amounts but symbolic. Blood from a stone paid grudgingly, a constant reminder of what their greed had cost them. My health improved dramatically. Blood pressure returned to 118/72 without medication. Sleep came easily again, dreamless and restorative. The doctor was amazed. Whatever changes you made, keep them up. I eliminated stressors, I told her, smiling. The biggest stressor, toxic family dynamics, was gone, replaced with boundaries, distance, and peace. Robert and I took our first real vacation in a decade, 3 weeks in Italy, Rome, Florence, the Amalfi Coast. We ate pasta and drank wine and wandered ancient ruins, and I didn't think about Jake once. Okay, maybe once. But only to appreciate how far away he was. You're glowing, Robert said one evening over Chianti in a Tuscan vineyard. I'm free, I replied. Work thrived too. With my personal life stabilized, I threw myself into my career. The clinic promoted me to nursing supervisor, a position I'd always been qualified for but too distracted to pursue. The raise brought my income to $85,000 annually. I started a financial literacy workshop for young mothers at the community center, teaching them what I'd learned: how to invest, budget, protect themselves, how to build safety nets so they'd never be vulnerable like I'd been. You're inspiring, one student told me, a single mom with 2 kids working 3 jobs. You give me hope. I gave her more than hope. I gave her knowledge, tools, power. Timmy visited every Sunday. Jake brought him, exchanges happening in my driveway with minimal conversation. The boy was thriving despite his parents' chaos, doing well in pre-K, laughing easily, showing no signs of trauma. I'd shielded him successfully. That was the victory I was proudest of. My social circle strengthened. Lila and I had weekly coffee dates where we laughed about the old days. The church community welcomed me back with warmth. Even the grocery store felt friendly again. People smiled, asked about my trip, treated me with the respect I'd always deserved. I'd been vindicated, completely, publicly, legally. The woman who'd been called a burden was now seen as a survivor, a fighter, someone who'd stood up for herself after decades of self-sacrifice. I wasn't a doormat anymore. I was a force, and God, did that feel good. 6 months after the divorce finalized, Jake appeared at my door on a Tuesday evening. No Timmy with him, no Kendra, just Jake, alone, looking somehow both older and younger than 33. He'd gained back some weight, healthy weight, not the stress-loss gauntness. His eyes were clearer. Mom. He didn't correct himself this time. Can we talk? Really talk? I almost said no. The reflex was there, muscle memory from months of boundaries and distance. But something in his posture, humility, genuine humility, made me pause. 5 minutes. We sat on the porch, not inside. Boundaries still mattered. I've been in therapy, he started, 3 months now, working through everything. The divorce, the charges, losing my job, but mostly working through what I did to you. I waited. My therapist said I need to make amends, not for forgiveness. She said I don't deserve that, but for accountability. He took a shaky breath. Mom, I destroyed you publicly because I was weak. Kendra manipulated me, yes, but I chose to say those words. I chose to humiliate you, and I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. The apology I'd wanted 8 months ago at the party, a year too late, but finally real. I'm also sober now, he continued. 63 days, going to AA meetings, trying to be the dad Timmy deserves and the man I should have been. Why now? I asked. Why the change? Because losing everything showed me what mattered, and I lost you first. Before the money, before Kendra, before the house and car and job, I lost my mom. And that hurt worse than anything else. Tears threatened my composure, but I held firm. What do you want from me, Jake? Nothing. I'm not asking for money or help or even forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I understand now. What you gave me, what I threw away, what you tried to teach me. He stood to leave. You didn't destroy me, Mom. You educated me, and I'm grateful, even though it hurt like hell. He walked to his truck. I called after him. Jake. He turned. I forgive you, partially, enough to move forward. I stood too. But things can't go back to how they were. Trust has to be earned, slowly. I know. You can bring Timmy on Sundays. We'll have dinner, you and me and him. No money discussions, no bailouts, no rescuing you from consequences. Just family with boundaries. His smile was watery but genuine. I'd like that. We rebuilt slowly. Supervised visits became unsupervised. Dinners became occasional weekend outings. I met his new girlfriend, a teacher, sensible and kind, the opposite of Kendra in every way. But the financial boundaries stayed ironclad. When Jake's truck died and he asked about a loan, I said no. You can take the bus, I did for years. When he wanted to move to a better apartment, save for it yourself. He never asked again, started handling his own problems. Growing up, finally, at 34, Timmy thrived in our new dynamic. Grandma time was special, and he didn't have to witness dysfunction. Jake and I had what we should have always had, mutual respect. I reflected on it one evening, watching Timmy play in my backyard while Jake grilled burgers. I hadn't destroyed my son. I'd educated him. There's a profound difference. Destruction breaks people permanently. Education breaks them temporarily to rebuild them stronger. Jake was stronger now, more resilient, more humble, better. And me? I'd transformed from devoted doormat to empowered sage, from the woman who absorbed everyone's burdens to the woman who taught them to carry their own. Life's about dignity. Family should uplift, not destroy. When someone steals your dignity publicly, justice wears many faces. Sometimes a mother's patient fury. Sometimes love looks like letting someone fall so they learn to stand on their own. My grandson would grow up knowing that love has boundaries. That family is earned, not assumed. That respect is a two-way street. These were the lessons I couldn't teach with money or sacrifice, only with consequences. And in the end, consequences were the greatest gift I ever gave my son. If you agree that sometimes the universe needs a nudge from a mother's hand, hit that like button. Because this story isn't just about revenge, it's about dignity, boundaries, and the power of saying enough. I'm Ellen. I was 50 when my son publicly humiliated me, and 50 when I decided to teach him what love with boundaries looks like. 8 months of systematic, legal, patient consequences that brought him to his knees and eventually to his senses. Was I cruel? Maybe. Was I justified? Absolutely. Family isn't a blank check. Love isn't unconditional tolerance of abuse, and motherhood doesn't mean being a doormat. Which city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing where this story resonates. Have you ever been betrayed by family, humiliated publicly? Had to make the impossible choice between forgiveness and self-respect? You're not alone. We've all got stories. Share yours below. This community is built on truth, healing, and the understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face their own consequences. Subscribe for more stories of justice, dignity, and the power of patient fury. Because revenge, when done right, isn't about destruction. It's about education. And class, as they say, is in session. Is in